Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to this seminar organized by the Philip K. Wong Center for Chinese Law at Faculty of Law of University of Hong Kong. This is a dual mode seminar, so welcome to those of you who are physically here and also those of you who are online. I don't see the number of people online, but there are quite a significant number who have registered online to participate. So welcome to you all. May I first introduce to you the speaker for today's seminar, and then I will talk about, introduce the topic of her speech. So the speaker is Professor Zhang Weiwei from the Kenneth Wang School of Law of Soochow University in China, which is situated in Suzhou. She is a PhD graduate of Peking University in 2005. And her research and teaching interests include legal philosophy, comparative law, law and literature, and law and Confucianism. And she has herself also written poems and other creative writings. So she is a very multidisciplinary scholar. So she has published a book of her poetry, which in English translation is called Rejoice of Heart, Poetry from Spring Mirror Garden, published in 2014. And she has produced a Chinese translation of John Woo's book, English book on Fountain of Justice, a study in natural law, which is quite an important work on natural law philosophy. She has also published in Chinese a collection of her essays, and the title of her book is Poetic Justice, Preliminary Research on Law and Poetics, published in 2017. Now today, Professor Zhang is going to talk about law and literature studies in China. Now, we all know that we in this law school cooperate with the Faculty of Arts in organizing a double degree program in law and literature. So law and literature is an area which our students, particularly students in that program, are particularly interested in. But I don't think in that program we have a course on law and literature in China. So I think today is a very good opportunity for us to learn about law and literature in China. Professor Zhang will be speaking mainly in English, but she will also supplement her presentation in Chinese. And also during the Q&A, the discussion period after her presentation, you are also welcome to raise questions in English and in Chinese. So without further ado, may I now hand over to Professor Zhang Weiwei.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the respected audience and guests, the distinguished Professor Chen, distinguished Professor Chen, and the prestigious Philip K.H. Wang Center for Chinese Law. It is fortunate that I have been invited here to give my lecture, but my paper was written in Chinese, so I wonder whether I should talk in English or in Chinese. Maybe bilingual.
Yeah, maybe bilingual, because when we advertised the seminar, we said the advertisement was in English. So
before my lecture, I would like to share two poems I wrote in 2019 in Boston when I was a visiting scholar at the history department of Harvard University. And I wrote my poem the first time I wrote poems in English. These are the first two poems I try to wrote directly in English. The first poem is about dawns on Charles River. Charles River is a river around the Cambridge city. I wonder you would like this poem. First I would like to share. Dogs on Charles River. When the sun rises, everything is still in a silent sleeping, but some morning boats sailing to the river. Who knows their names? They are sailors from division of sky and river, from our memories of spring garden of our hearts. A shiny good day, day and night and day. When you listen, the heaven, the Jesus, like all the babies, smiling and sleeping, like breathing, raining, and gentle shining, like the fragrance of early spring grasses and the little flowers' petals. I hope it is a silently spring already in dawn of Cambridge. It is in everyday common and grace belonging. It is a so wonderful dawn, like baby's cheeks. As babies love your eyes and hugs, wonderful dawns before Charles River are all our spring and smiling hearts. Yeah, this poem describes my thinking of River of Cambridge, the wonderful dawn, the lovely and cute image, and the landscape in comparison to the beginning of a new life, like the birth and cheek and the hug of baby. Yeah, I am the author. It is first time. I remember it was November 2019. Yeah, I wrote in Cambridge. And the second poems, because when I was a visiting scholar, I do cooking. I did cooking every day. It is hard working for me. So Hamburg, it is a food. Normally, I ate with my children and in Cambridge. Hamburg, 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 jumping Hamburg, like sunrise, like sharp slapping bottom of flying birds. One day, one bites, one dew, one sigh, one shines. They are gifts of God, you know, everyday source. Through daylight, through sky, hamburger like sunrise, smiling and sighing, every day begins and fades. You know boils of surfers, they are jokes and friends, like the life seasoning of earth. These poems describe the comic style of everyday dining and living, with the humor and the smile, and the latter side hardness of life and everyday livelihood enduring. So maybe you think it is not very good, but I appreciate the first two English poems I wrote. Yeah, it is the first time I wrote in English for English poems. Now it is my sharing before my lecture. Yeah, my lecture because the paper Professor Chen knew it. I wrote in Chinese. Yeah, and because it is about the teaching and studies at law school of mainland China. So we teach normally in Chinese in classroom. I have taught law and literature nearly 10 years. So I think I will have some experience what I want to share, and I want to introduce which stage of development of the law and the literature studies in China, in mainland China law schools and universities. But there is a problem that I wrote in Chinese. So you know, Professor Chen had already introduced me. I was associate professor at Kenneth Wang School of Law, Suzhou University, China. Suzhou University has the Suzhou University has a long history. It was founded by the church more than 125 years. 125 years, and the law school was also very famous in Chinese legal education history. The law school, Kenneth Wang School of Law. At Kenneth Wang, he invested for the law school. He donated 100 donated 1 billion 1 billion RMB 1 billion 1 billion yuan for the law school. Yeah. So I wrote in Chinese, but I have to introduce in English. Is it possible?
I think it's fine. If the PowerPoint is in Chinese, so those who can read Chinese can read the PowerPoint. So you can say in English first, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, because some audience by the internet, the Chinese student Chinese.
Yeah.
Chinese, the law and the literature studies in China. Yeah, the history of this study it is very young discipline. It began last century 90s. So until now, it has been only 20 years for the studies, teachings, and research. Yeah, it is very young discipline at law school. The structure of my paper will be the 3 parts, and I will do some comparative studies and the historical studies. Firstly, I want to retrospect the history and culture tradition of China, because when we talk about literature, it will combine with our tradition, our history, and the cultural tradition. So as we all know, that China has very long history of the culture. We have long history of individual, 士大夫, individual, and long history of the literature. We know 诗经 from the pre-Qing dynasty, 先秦的诗经 pre-Qing dynasty. We have very splendid the literature creators. Yeah, so it was very different from the Western law and literature history. So firstly, we should focus on Chinese history and culture, as well as the Chinese legal studies history. So it was composed in Chinese, but I think most of you can read it and know it. I want to mention that there had been a transition from the Chinese cultural tradition into the modernity. There has been a bigger transition, and our law studies and law discipline also in the transition. So we have to face with the disputes between the rights and the law, 礼法之争 rights and the law. Rights and law had ever been our the problem in our Chinese law modernization. 中国法近代化的理法之争哈。So when we talk about the Western law and the literature, we should be in the context of this transition, the context. Yeah, and so I ask a series of questions. Should we have the religious background, such as in the Western history, the civic religion, how could we cope with our Confucianism? 我们如何对待历史的儒家 Confucianism? Is the law only a system of rule, or a system of value and thoughts? 法律是规则还是价值和思想体系？So, and I named the Chinese law tradition 中华法 because the legal history, as to the legal history, our law system in the history named 中华法系中华法系中华法 So, 中华法 Chinese law tradition had been very different to the Western formal rational law. As we all know that an idea is very important. The reason. We know that from Immanuel Kant, the enlightened philosopher, 理性这观念 reason is very important for the spirit of Western law. 理性是西方法的精神 but reason is not the spirit of Chinese law. Yeah. So if we talk about the literature, could the literature became the spirit of Chinese law? 文学可能成为我们讨论中华法的一种精神吗？And I want to distinguish some ideas such as humanism, 人文主义 humanism, such as the arts, 艺术领域as well as the aesthetics, 的美学等等。These are very similar ideas to the literature. 对文学来说有很多概念是近似，比如说艺术、美学、人文，对吗？人文在大学里面我们通常会讲到人文学科，那么文史哲应该是属于人文学科。What is the humanism meant in Chinese law tradition? 人文主义对于中华法来说有什么意义？Yeah, I also want to research on an idea, the culture. A culture, it is very hard to be translated. 文化文这概念 it is very difficult to be translated. 文 is culture the face of Chinese world? 文化是中国人生活的信仰吗？ Is culture the face of our Chinese world? What is the status of culture in our understanding of the rule and the law? 我们在理解法律治理的时候，我们如何理解文化？So this part I will want to talk about the face of law. We know that 法律信仰 the face of law. Because as to for our Chinese intellectuals, the culture could be our face. The culture could be our face. 对我们文化中国的知识分子来说，文化可以成为信仰。Yeah, not only the religion, but the culture could independently be our face. 文化可以独立的可以成为我们的精神世界的信仰So as to when I talking about the face of law, I want to mention a book named Law and the Revolution, Law and the Religion. Law and the Revolution was translated by my teacher, my doctor, the teacher, Harold Berman's Law and the Revolution, and Harold Berman's Law and the Religion. These two books had ever been the frequently cited book by the graduate students 在中国的研究生的学业中，这两部书是最高频率引用就经常会被引用。Just now, Professor Chen introduced that I translated John Woo's Fountain of Justice. John Woo, he had been the teacher at the law school of Suzhou University, this book, Fountain of Justice, was about the natural law studies and the perspective of a Christian to view the law and the law and the rule of law. 从一个基督徒的眼光去看待自然法，看待宗教和法律，看待法律制法治。I as a teacher, because I had been a student, then a teacher, and I have about 20 years legal studies, so I have some ideas. What is the law? I think that law is not only a rule, a system of rule. It should be based and originated from the very far away sources or the very deep foundations, as to the Western world, such as the reason, and to the Chinese, I want it could be based on the culture and the literature. So it is why I am interested in law and literature. Besides, I want to do some writing. I also thought that literature could be the spirit and the foundation when we learn what is the law. So in this part, I also want to ask, maybe the audience, some ideas of the difference between the Western reason, the legal reason, and the Chinese culture of the rule of law. 我很想问一下听众有关你对于西方的理性、法律理性和中国的法律之治中的文化观念的理解。肯定是有很大的差别。So now I want to definitely introduce what is law and literature, because firstly it is a curriculum, a course at law school. 它是一个课程。It is a discipline and a course at law school. Law and literature, it is 选修课该怎么表达
？Elective elective course.
Elective course, at law school. And law and literature originated in America from last century 70s. It is from the James White's the book, The Legal Imagination, 法律想象. It was published in 1970s. So this law and literature originated, only half a century, And I want to introduce Martha Nussbaum. She is a teacher at Law School of Chicago University. She teaches law and ethics, law and literature. So I have read her books, and they enlightened me a lot. Yeah. Martha Nussbaum she graduates from the because her bachelor was arts, and she is a writer. So I like to read her books, and she talk about the law and why it is important to teach law and literature at law school. Why it is important. So she had criticized some ideas by Richard Posner. Richard Posner, his law and literature based on another idea, such as the utilitarianism, 功利主义 and the instrumental reason, 工具理性 So Martha Nussbaum sometimes will criticize another paradigm of the law and the literature. So I want to introduce the American law and the literature history. Can you read the Chinese characters? Because I copied from my paper.
讲快一点，因为很是9点半。
好。So now we can focus on the academic, the law and the literature academic, the history of the thoughts and the paradigm in China. And normally we view the law and the literature. It was originated in US, and it had ever been a criticism to the legal economics, 对法律经济学的一个反思 to legal economics. And the Chinese law and literature was originated from the translation. I want to introduce that the Richard Posner. Chinese law and literature from the last century 90s. When I was a graduate student, I read this book, Richard Posner's Overcoming Law and the Problems of Jurisprudence. I thought that it is very interesting for the legal academics. And later, the law and the literature of Richard Posner was translated by 李国庆法律文学，在 上世纪90年代被翻译成中文。This could be the happening of the legal law and literature studies and research. 法律文学 Richard Posner's Law and Literature translated into Chinese in last century 90s. Just now I mentioned Martha Nussbaum. Martha Nussbaum's The Fragility of the Goodness, Poetic Justice, Shakespeare's and the Law were all translated into Chinese. And these books were the importance for our law and literature studies. These books translated. Also, I have to mention Paul Kahn at the Law School of Yale University. He researched on Shakespeare's King Lear. I often taught about the texts of Shakespeare, such as the King Lear and the Merchant Venice of Venice, 威尼斯商人. These texts of Shakespeare were related to the law and the literature. So the law and the literature studies in China has two levels to reaction to the Western law and literature. The first is what is the Chinese law and literature texts? 我们中国法律文学的文本是什么? What is our text? What is our materials and problems? And law and literature could also be beneficial for us to reflection the humanism of law, 法律的人文精神, the humanism. What is the methodology of law and literature? Methodology. Normally we will resort to Richard Posner's Law and Literature. There are 4 dimensions of the relationship between law and literature. The law in literature, the law as literature, the law through literature, and the law of literature. From these 4 levels, 4 dimensions, as a teacher, I would like to show students with the texts, the literature text, as well as the legal materials to explain how these 4 dimensions could function when we studies on law and literature. And just now, I asked Professor Chen because the law and literature cannot be very mainstream course at law school. 它不是主流的科学, and it is much more interdisciplinary, 交叉学科, interdisciplinary, and peripheral edged the course. 它是边缘化的一个学科. So it will based on that the students would like to read some literature. 它会在于学生对文学感兴趣的学生. There has been a very well-known sentence that the poets escaping from the law school, 从法学院逃逸诗人. Some students, a lot of students, they are fond of literature, then they will choose this course. 对文学感兴趣学生，他们会选择这个课哈. what is dedication of literature to law? Martha Nussbaum thought that literature could broaden one's border of the experience and give the possibility to fancy, and and also the ability of empathy. Then we could be much more humanized. And we will broaden our eyesight, perspective, and we could we will view the law as a very thick understanding， 就有厚度的理解哈。那么and as to the civic education, law and literature could make the citizen much more have a lot of how can I say, compassion, rationality, and could be much more independent citizenship, and could be a judge, the possibility to have the ability to be a judge. So the poetic justice is based on our emotion, sentiment, and our ability of the compassion, understanding, and judgment. So law and literature studies could make the students and the citizen transcend the reason and utilitarianism, and could provide some reflections of our world, the government, the rule of law, and the justice. What is justice? It is not only from the rational question. It's not the question from the reason, but maybe from our soul, 我们的灵魂之问哈, from our ability of our soul, 灵魂力量, our power of our soul in our faith. I have to mention that the teacher at law school of Peking University, Professor Zhu Shuli, his book 法律文学以中国传统戏剧为材料, because his book were all written in Chinese, but he is very famous in the legal circle, and Su Li's law and literature frequently used in the class of the law and literature. And the student of Su Li had translated Richard Posner's Law and Literature. So it is our mainland China legal studies on law and literature from the last century 90s. I want to mention the Professor Su Li's Law and Literature. Also, Su Li's paper was well known about the film 秋菊打官司, a movie. It is very famous. The director is 张艺谋的秋菊打官司. Professor Su Li used this movie to to teach what is the law and the literature in Chinese understanding and imagination. And in Suli's book, he also cited the drama of Yuan Dynasty, Yuan Zhaju, drama of Yuan Dynasty, and such as Liang Zhu, of 晋朝时期的 the dramas. He used a lot of materials, Chinese local and native inherent materials. 中国自己的戏剧元杂剧和像梁祝、窦娥冤梁祝、窦娥冤还有包公戏，他引用了大量 Chinese dramas and Chinese plays in his book. And as a Chinese scholar, I also reflected on Richard Posner's law and literature. I think his understanding of literature is much more vulgar culture. How can I say? 庸俗文化, much more modern culture, 现代文化, not the classical culture. And not such as the ancient Greek epics, not the Shakespeare's. So I think his literature is much more modern, modern art and modern culture, and much more democratic understandings that the culture should be very popular and it is very equal and popular, but it is very modern understanding. I think culture could be a very different definition, such as the classical culture, the culture in history, and the nation's culture, 民族文化, the nation's culture, and the culture of villages, 乡土文化. We know that the writer Mo Yan, he had won the Nobel Prize. I understand that his novels were mostly based on Chinese villages, not a Chinese metropolitan. 并不是中国大都市，都是乡土中国。So when we talking about literature, there are many kinds of literature. Western literature is also very different to Chinese culture, Chinese understanding of the literature. And law and literature, what is the nature of it? It could be placed in the postmodernism, 后现代, and it could be a movement of the legal criticism. 它是批判法学的一个运动 movement of the legal criticism. So I think law and literature could have very grand future and hope for future, because it is reflective, it is criticizing, and it is postmodernism. So it should be philosophic. It should be a kind of philosophy. So I like it. It is much more philosophic and much more metaphysics. 它会有点形而上学，所以我认为它会有很大的成长。So the last part of my paper is about the materials and the texts. How we teach at law school. What kinds of materials I applied at the classroom. I want to introduce to the students what is the text for this class, for the course. So I want to mention the materials. Because law and literature was originated in US law schools, so normally we have to introduce the Western novels such as Charles Dickens, Dickens 小说, the novel of Charles Dickens, and the plays of William Shakespeare's were frequently cited at law school. It is the same as in the Chinese law school. We will introduce the Western novels, the Western dramas, Western movies. Yeah, students are very much fond of the American, the 美剧, American modern drama of the of the courts, of the lawyers. It is very popular, as well as the Hong Kong TV show of the law topics, the lawyers and the courts. 香港律政剧和美国的美剧都是学生们爱看啊。And these movies, plays, novels are very normal to introduce to the student. But to my interest, I will introduce the poems. I want to introduce the poems. And it is a little difficult for our teacher to introduce the Holy Bible scripts. The Holy Bible, the stories of Holy Bible sometimes could be the materials for the law and the literature studies. Yeah, such as the Genesis. Yeah, but as to our law school teacher, it is a little hard because different religion and different cultures. So I would like to introduce the novels and the plays and the movies. Yeah. So definitely, definitely the poems, the poems. I had ever taught the 诗经, the ancient poetry of China. 中国最古老的诗集就是《诗经》了啊。The pre-Qing dynasty, the poetry, 的诗经. There could be some poems related to the lawsuits and related to the law and politics. 有一些诗篇是和政治有关的，比如说大雅文王篇，比如说黄鸟篇。它有一些诗经的，它是诗经 is much more musical， 它是很有音乐性 musical. And I will ask students to firstly ask them to read the poems. Then we will choose some poems to do some interpretation. What is the meaning of the politics, law, and the rules in the ancient China? In ancient China, and I think also it is very hard work if we want to read the ancient Greek poems. 古希腊的 epics, it is very hard to read, but it is the Western classics. 古希腊的史诗啊，荷马、伊利亚特、奥德赛，这些都是难度很大。Odyssey and Iliad, they were the Western classics. And the dramas. last year, I taught law and literature at law school. I taught about Shakespeare's texts. Yeah, and Hamlet, King Lear, Merchant of Venice, and Shakespeare's play of his historical play， 他的历史剧 historical play， now were researched, now were interested by a lot of the legal scholars. Such I remember that there was a book named The Political Philosophy of Shakespeare, was written by a Chinese scholar. 莎士比亚的政治哲学是由法学院老师写的啊。It was published last year. I remember about Shakespeare's legal philosophy and political philosophy. And novels, it was much more popular, and it is easy to be read. And the novels. As to our Chinese, we would like to read our classical novels, such as 红楼梦, our classical novels. And a legal teacher, he had taught 西游记, the legal world of the 西游记. 红楼梦 is rated as the top of the novel in Chinese legal circle. 我们法律界的人把红楼梦的研究已经做到极致了 the top. And I remember about the law and literature on 红楼梦. There had already published several books about 红楼梦, the law and literature of 红楼梦. On 红楼梦.
Did you mention the English name of 红楼梦? Maybe Dream of Red Chambers?
Yeah.
红楼梦 is Dream of
Red Chambers.
And then 水浒传 is Tale of Water Margin, something like that.
The four classics of Chinese literature, 中国四大名著. And I also want to mention 爱玲张爱玲, the very famous novelist 张爱玲. She had been the alumni of Hong Kong University, 张爱玲, Hong Kong University, and her study on the Dream of Red Chamber was very famous. 她对《红楼梦》的研究是非常有名。And she also translated 海上花. It is the novel of the Qing dynasty. 就晚清的小说《海上花》。It was translated by 张爱玲. She had ever studied here in Hong Kong University. 张爱玲, she was the very famous novelist in China.
I think her English name is Eileen Chang.
Eileen Chang. Yeah.
Chang.
And the movies. Just now I mentioned the Zhang Yimou's movie, the lawsuits by Qiu Ju. Qiu Ju is a woman of the village, the 乡村 village, the 村姑哈，她是一个秋菊哈。张艺谋's movie, Zhang Yimou's movie had been frequently applied by our Chinese scholars when we studied on law and literature. Why? Maybe Zhang Yimou's movie are so popular in China, so popular. And the Zhang Yimou's movie 第21条 it is about the prosecutor 就是那个检察院怎么说
？Prosecution.
Yeah， 第21条 ，the 21st article， the name of the movie， was also be studied as a law and literature study. Yeah, because this part is about the judgment, the text of judgment in the Chinese history, the judgment. And now, as a conclusion, I want to conclude some my experience of the teaching and the research of this subject of law and literature. My teaching experience. Yeah, in China, not all the law school have this law and literature course. 并非所有法学院都有这个课。And it's such as I remember. Yeah, in Tsinghua University, Law School of Tsinghua University, they have the law and literature class in the course. They will teach about some such as the scientific novel, and they will teach about some such as the novel of Kafka's novels, and Camus, the French novelist Camus, the strangers, 局外人 the strangers, and some Plato's dialogue, and the play of William Shakespeare. And also in the university, China University of Law and Politics, 中国政法大学, they have law and literature courses. But I remember this course, law and literature, were taught by the Department of Literature, not law school, at the university. How many times?
Maybe 5 more minutes. Finish in 5 minutes. Okay. Can you?
Yeah.
You're already in the conclusion.
Yeah, in the conclusion. Conclusion, this part, conclusion, yeah. And I also want to introduce the publication in this spheres. Professor Yu Zongqi, yeah, I remember he published about law and literature very early in China, yeah. His book named 中国文学与中国法律 外国文学与外国法律 And Professor Zhu Suli at Law School of Peking University, I just mentioned his book about law and literature, yeah, based on Chinese traditional genres, yeah. And the students of Shuli had translated the Western law and literature books. So in Peking University, law and literature is the study is very they have very strong they have they do a lot of things. They have a lot of publication about this law and literature. And I want to mention Professor Feng Xiang at Law School of Tsinghua University. Feng Xiang, he got a PhD of literature at Harvard and a JD from Yale. So he taught in China. So he had a very strong background to teach law and literature, and his publication is much more, such as much more prose, like the 散文化的 prose, much more prose and much more literature, I think. And he had translated Holy Bible, the New Testament, into Chinese. So he is a famous scholar of this field. And I want to introduce Professor Liu Xin of China's University of Law and Law and Politics. Yeah, he had published a book named 法律文学以中国基层司法实践展开. It was a newly publication on law and literature. And Professor Xu Zhongming, he teach at Law School of Songshan Dashi,
Sun University.
He researched on law and literature, and he published about the Baogong, the Baogong, the drama and the Yuan drama about Baogong. And some young scholars, their doctoral thesis is about law and literature, such as Liu Xinxian. Yeah, a young scholar, he researched on law and literature. And the teacher at China University of Law and Politics, they do a lot of interdisciplinary studies between law and literature. So I think I have already do some conclusion on the publication, the scholars, and the courses at mainland China's law schools. So such as my paper, I want to provide my ideas about the culture and history tradition with the law and literature teaching, the Western law and literature, and the materials and text of this law and literature spheres, as well as the teaching and the publication of law and literature in mainland China. I think my study on this sphere, it is much more confined, but I would like to talk and communicate with audience about this topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Many thanks. Thank you Many thanks to Professor Zhang for giving us a very comprehensive overview of the study of law and literature in contemporary China. You introduced to us how the law and literature movement originated in the US and how various English works were translated into Chinese, and how this study of law and literature became a field of study in China, including becoming a course taught in many Chinese law schools. And you yourself also taught such a course. Unfortunately, if my understanding is correct, we here at University of Hong Kong do not yet have a course on law and literature in China. So students will not have the opportunity to study the various Chinese literary texts from the legal perspective. But I think your lecture, which we have also recorded for future reference, will be a very useful starting point for students here at HKU who would like to learn more about law and literature in China. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have a double degree program in which students study both law and literature. So I think in the future, we should also develop more in the direction of the study of law and literature in China and Chinese literature and more. So thank you to all of you for attending this seminar, and we also thank particularly Professor Zhang for giving this most interesting and insightful presentation. So thank you, Professor Zhang. And, so hope you visit us again, and look forward to seeing all of you in our other future events. Thank you.